I never thought I would be telling a story like this. I am Nelson, 34 years old, and an architectural engineer whose life changed forever last year. I discovered my wife Emma was having an affair with my cousin Jake, a man who was practically a brother to me growing up. The double betrayal from the two people I trusted most nearly destroyed me. What I never expected was that during this crisis, Jake's wife Sophia would become not only my greatest support but eventually something more. What Emma and Jake never anticipated was that their betrayal would ultimately lead to real happiness for the people they hurt. Before I tell you how I discovered their affair and what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever had to rebuild your life after someone broke your trust. 8 years ago, I married my college sweetheart Emma. We met during sophomore year in an economics class we both took as an elective. I was immediately drawn to her confidence and quick wit. After 3 years of dating, I proposed on a hiking trip to her favorite mountain overlook. The wedding was everything we had dreamed of, surrounded by family and friends who believed in our future together. We settled into a comfortable suburban life outside of Boston. My career at Anderson and Pike Architects took off with promotions coming steadily as I developed a reputation for innovative, sustainable designs. Emma found success too, climbing the ranks at a digital marketing agency until she became an executive overseeing major client accounts. From the outside, we had it all: the renovated colonial house, financial stability, and respect from our peers. Jake had been more than just my cousin throughout our lives. Only 13 months apart in age, we were raised more like brothers than cousins. Our mothers were sisters who lived just 3 blocks apart, so we shared everything growing up: baseball teams, camping trips, summer jobs, even double dates in high school. He was the best man at my wedding, and I never questioned his place in my life. 4 years ago, Jake married Sophia. I stood beside him as his best man, returning the favor from my own wedding. Sophia was an art teacher with a warm personality that complemented Jake's more outgoing nature. She had an amazing eye for design and color that I always admired professionally. The four of us quickly became a tight unit, getting together at least twice a month for game nights or dinners. We spent holidays together, took an annual summer vacation to Jake's family cabin in Maine, and celebrated each other's accomplishments. Looking back, I can see the first subtle signs that something was changing, though I missed them completely at the time. Emma became increasingly critical of small things about me: the way I loaded the dishwasher, how I dressed for social events, even my laugh. Her phone became an extension of her hand, and she guarded it fiercely, always keeping it screened down and taking calls in another room. The late nights at work multiplied with vague explanations about client emergencies or deadline crunches that I never questioned because I trusted her completely. I blamed myself for the growing distance between us. Maybe I was working too much. Perhaps I had become complacent in our relationship. I tried everything to reconnect: surprise date nights at restaurants we loved, weekend getaways to places from our early dating years, thoughtful gifts that referenced inside jokes or special memories. When these efforts fell flat, I even suggested couples therapy, which Emma immediately dismissed as unnecessary. Around this time, Emma and Jake discovered a shared interest in fitness that neither had shown before. They both joined the same CrossFit gym and began training together 3 mornings a week before work. Emma would come home energized, talking about personal records and workout challenges while showering. I was genuinely happy that she had found something she enjoyed so much, and never thought to question why Jake, who had always preferred team sports over solo workouts, had suddenly developed the same interest. While Emma and Jake were growing closer through their morning workouts, I found myself developing a deeper friendship with Sophia. We often ended up chatting while our spouses were busy with other things at group gatherings. She confided in me that Jake seemed emotionally distant lately, spending more time on his phone and less time engaged in their relationship. I shared similar concerns about Emma, though I framed it as general marital growing pains. The company Christmas party last December was when my subconscious finally registered what my conscious mind refused to see. Emma spent most of the evening circulating separately from me, which was not unusual given her social nature and marketing role. But I noticed something odd whenever I would spot Emma across the room. Jake seemed to be nearby. There were furtive glances, brief touches that lingered slightly too long, and an inexplicable tension in the air when the four of us ended up at the same table for dessert. On the drive home, Emma was unusually quiet. When I asked if she had enjoyed the party, her answer felt rehearsed, lacking the specific anecdotes and observations she typically shared. That night, as she slept, I lay awake replaying moments from recent months, trying to convince myself that I was imagining problems where none existed. After all, this was Emma, my wife of 8 years, and Jake, the cousin I had trusted all my life. They would never betray me like that. Or so I thought. The truth revealed itself on a Tuesday afternoon in January. I had come home early with a splitting headache, something that rarely happened in my carefully structured work life. Emma was at a client meeting and not expected home for hours. As I settled on the couch with painkillers and water, I noticed her iPad on the coffee table. A notification sound pinged, and the screen lit up with a message preview from Jake. Cannot wait to see you later. Same place as last week. In 8 years of marriage, I had never snooped through Emma's devices. I believed in privacy and trust as cornerstones of our relationship. But something about that innocuous-sounding message, combined with my growing unease over recent months, propelled me to pick up the tablet. To my shock, it unlocked immediately, the password having been synced with our home computer. What I found shattered my world completely. There were hundreds of messages between them, dating back nearly 6 months. They contained explicit photos, detailed accounts of their meetups at a hotel near Jake's office, and worst of all, emotional declarations that went far beyond physical attraction. They had established regular rendezvous times coordinated around both my schedule and Sophia's teaching hours. They had inside jokes about sneaking around. They had even begun tentatively discussing a future together. I sat motionless for 2 hours reading through their entire illicit history, with a detached numbness that I now recognize as shock. When Emma walked through the door at 6:30 that evening, I was still in the same spot, the iPad open beside me. She knew immediately from my face that something was catastrophically wrong. What happened? Is someone hurt? She asked, dropping her bags by the door. Yes, I answered quietly. Me. Her eyes fell on the iPad and the color drained from her face. Her first instinct was denial. I do not know what you think you saw, but you are misunderstanding, she stammered, stepping toward me. I just shook my head and quoted one of her messages. Verbatim. Jake, what we have feels more real than anything I have ever experienced. Sometimes I think we were always meant to find each other. The confrontation that followed was both painful and revealing. After realizing that complete denial was impossible, Emma shifted to blame. According to her, I had been emotionally unavailable, too focused on my career, and unable to understand her needs. Jake got her in ways I never could. They had not planned for this to happen, but their connection was undeniable. We did not want to hurt you or Sophia, she said, as if that somehow mitigated their actions. I spent that night in a hotel, my mind reeling between crushing grief and disorienting anger. The next morning, I called Sophia and asked to meet her for coffee. I debated whether it was my place to tell her, but ultimately decided she deserved to know the truth, just as I would have wanted someone to tell me. We met at a quiet diner, far from our usual haunts. I still remember how composed she looked in her blue sweater hair, pulled back in a neat ponytail, grading papers, while waiting for me to arrive. That composure cracked when I slid my phone across the table, showing her screenshots of the conversations I had discovered. To my surprise, Sophia did not break down. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through the messages, but her voice remained steady when she finally spoke. I suspected something, she admitted. There were too many coincidences, too many unexplained absences. I just did not have proof, and I did not want to believe Jake could do this. We decided after several hours of painful conversation that we would confront them together. Sophia suggested inviting them both to dinner at her and Jake's house that weekend, presenting it as a chance to catch up since the holiday season had been so busy. Neither Emma nor Jake suspected anything, readily agreeing to the plan. That Saturday night remains one of the most surreal experiences of my life. We all sat around the dining table that Sophia and I had helped Jake refinish last summer, eating lasagna that Sophia had prepared, engaging in superficial conversation, while Sophia and I exchanged knowing glances. After dinner, before anyone could suggest moving to the living room for drinks, I cleared my throat. There is something we need to discuss, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Sophia and I know about the affair. The shock on their faces quickly gave way to something else, relief. It was as if they had been waiting to be discovered, tired of the deception, but unwilling to end it themselves. What followed was perhaps the most shocking part of the evening. Rather than express remorse or beg forgiveness, Jake reached for Emma's hand across the table and announced that they were in love. They had not wanted to hurt us, but they could not deny their feelings any longer. They wanted divorces so they could be together openly. We hope we can all be adults about this, Emma added, as if requesting a simple favor, rather than the complete restructuring of two marriages and an extended family. There is no reason we cannot all remain civil. I left their house in a daze, Sophia's hand squeezing mine briefly at the door, in silent solidarity before I walked to my car alone. That night in my empty house, the full weight of the betrayal finally crashed over me. I sobbed until I had no tears left, then lay in darkness wondering how the life I had so carefully built could disintegrate so completely. The next few weeks passed in a blur of depression and dysfunction. I took a leave of absence from work, barely able to focus on basic tasks, let alone complex architectural designs. I lost 15 pounds, my appetite vanished along with my sleep. Friends called concerned by my sudden disappearance from social activities, but I could not bear to explain what had happened. The only person who seemed to understand without explanation was Sophia. 3 weeks after our confrontation dinner, she texted me. Just checking if you are okay. This is hard. Maybe we should talk about next steps. That simple message was the lifeline I needed to begin pulling myself out of the darkness. Sophia and I met at a coffee shop midway between our homes on a cold February afternoon. We had a practical reason for meeting to share information about lawyers and discuss the divorce process. Neither of us had ever imagined navigating. She arrived, bundled in a red scarf, her expression tired but determined. I found a good attorney, she said after we had settled with our drinks. She specializes in cases where infidelity is involved. I can give you her information if you want. That first meeting lasted nearly 3 hours, moving from practical divorce matters to the emotional impact of the betrayal. We discovered that Jake had moved in with Emma at our house, while Sophia remained in what had been her marital home. We compared notes on our individual confrontations with our spouses, finding disturbing similarities in their justifications and blame shifting. We decided to meet weekly after that, creating a support system that neither of us could find elsewhere. Friends tried to be understanding, but unless you have experienced that particular type of betrayal, it is difficult to truly comprehend the depth of the wound. Family members were torn between sides, many uncomfortable discussing the situation at all. About a month into our regular meetings, Sophia revealed something troubling. Jake told his parents that I was emotionally abusive throughout our marriage, that he tried everything to make it work before turning to Emma for support. I was stunned. Emma said almost the same thing to her sister. She claimed I was controlling and dismissive of her needs that she and Jake connected because they were both unhappy in their marriages. We realized they were crafting a narrative that cast them as victims rather than betrayers. Instead of fueling our anger, this discovery strengthened our resolve to handle our divorces with dignity. We agreed to focus on fair settlements rather than revenge to avoid public mudslinging and to support each other through the process. As winter turned to spring, our weekly meetings evolved. We began discussing topics beyond our divorces, books we were reading, projects at work, childhood memories. Sophia started bringing her sketchbook, showing me designs for spaces she imagined. I shared ideas for sustainable building practices I had been researching during my leave of absence. The turning point came on a rainy evening in April. We had met for dinner at a small Italian restaurant, and 3 hours had passed without either of us mentioning Jake or Emma once. Walking her to her car under a shared umbrella, I realized something had shifted between us. I saw Sophia not just as my cousin's soon-to-be ex-wife or my fellow betrayal survivor, but as a woman of remarkable strength, intelligence, and humor. I found myself noticing details I had overlooked before: the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed genuinely, her thoughtful pauses before answering difficult questions, her creative perspective on ordinary things. "This is weird, right?" she asked suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. "Sometimes I forget why we started meeting in the first place." "Is that bad?" I asked cautiously. She shook her head. "I think it might be the healthiest thing either of us has done in months." Both our divorces were finalized by June with relatively fair settlements considering the circumstances. The process had been draining, but surprisingly civil perhaps, because neither Jake nor Emma wanted to risk details of their affair becoming part of public court records. With the legal ties severed, Sophia and I found ourselves at another crossroads. The weekly meetings that had sustained us through the worst period of our lives no longer had an official purpose, yet neither of us suggested ending them. Instead, we began helping each other reclaim parts of ourselves that had been neglected in our marriages. Sophia had always wanted to learn rock climbing, so I joined her for beginner classes at an indoor gym. I had missed playing guitar, which Emma had found noisy and distracting. So Sophia encouraged me to pick it up again, sitting through my rusty practice sessions with genuine interest. By July, it became impossible to ignore the growing attraction between us. We had spent an afternoon hiking, reaching a scenic overlook, just as the sun began to set. The conversation had turned to our fears about moving forward romantically. What if we are just rebounding? I asked, voicing the concern that had been nagging at me. Or, what if everyone thinks we got together to get back at them? Sophia added. Does it matter what anyone thinks if we know the truth? I countered. The question hung in the air between us. Before she could answer, I leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, she closed the distance, and our first kiss felt like the beginning of something honest and new. We agreed to date privately for 3 months, before telling anyone, giving ourselves time to ensure our feelings were genuine and not reactionary. Those summer months were healing in ways I never expected. We talked about everything, especially the hard things, our fears of being hurt again, our insecurities, our hopes for the future. For the first time, I understood what true partnership felt like. The test came in September when we encountered Jake and Emma at a restaurant downtown. The awkwardness was palpable as they approached our table, their expressions a mix of surprise and discomfort. So you two, huh? Jake said, his attempt at nonchalance falling flat. Yes, Sophia replied, simply neither apologetic nor provocative. The brief exchange left us shaken, leading to a lengthy conversation that night about our motivations. Were we together because of genuine feelings, or was there an element of revenge in our attraction? I know exactly why I am with you, I told Sophia, holding her hands across my kitchen table. When I imagine my future, you are in it because of who you are, not because of who you were married to. She squeezed my hands and nodded. I feel the same way. What they did brought us together, but it is not why we are staying together. That night marked the transition from cautious dating to committed relationship. We were no longer healing from the past. We were building toward a future. 1 year after discovering the affairs that ended our marriages, Sophia and I moved in together. We chose a neighborhood across town, away from the homes we had shared with our ex-spouses, symbolizing our fresh start. Our relationship had developed into something neither of us had experienced before, a partnership built on complete honesty, mutual respect, and genuine appreciation for each other's strengths and weaknesses. The contrast between my relationship with Sophia and my marriage to Emma became increasingly apparent. With Emma, I had always felt I needed to be the perfect husband, financially successful, emotionally stable, never showing vulnerability. With Sophia, I could express doubts, admit fears, and share burdens. She did not expect perfection. She valued authenticity. Telling our families about our relationship had been challenging. My parents still reeling from the divorce, and Jake's betrayal initially worried we were making impulsive decisions out of pain. Mom, I understand your concern, I explained during a tense Sunday dinner. But Sophia and I did not rush into this. We took time to make sure what we feel is real. But she was married to Jake, my mother protested. How can you separate that from who she is to you now? The same way you separate Jake's actions from the nephew you loved all his life, I replied gently. People are not defined by who they were married to. Over time, most of our families came to accept our relationship, seeing the positive changes in both of us. Some relatives remained scandalized by what they called the partner swap, but their discomfort said more about them than about us. Meanwhile, we heard through mutual friends that Emma and Jake's relationship was already showing cracks. The passionate affair that had seemed worth destroying 2 marriages for apparently lost its luster when faced with ordinary life challenges. There were rumors of Jake's wandering eye, of Emma's growing dissatisfaction with his financial instability compared to my established career. This information brought no satisfaction, only a sense of sadness for the unnecessary pain caused, and a deeper appreciation for what Sophia and I had built from the ruins. I realized that in many ways Emma had done me a favor by ending our marriage. We had grown in different directions with different values and priorities. I deserved someone who chose me completely, not someone who settled for me while wanting someone else. Sophia experienced similar clarity about her marriage to Jake. I spent years trying to be the perfect wife, thinking if I just supported him enough, he would finally appreciate me, she confided one evening. With you, I never feel like I am auditioning for my place in your life. As our relationship strengthened, our professional lives flourished too. Sophia, inspired by our renovations to the new house, started her own interior design business, focusing on sustainable materials that complemented my architectural work. We sometimes collaborated on projects, her artistic vision, enhancing my technical designs in ways that impressed clients and colleagues alike. After 18 months together, we decided to make another significant change. I was offered a partnership position at a prestigious sustainable architecture firm in Denver, and after careful consideration, we decided to accept it. The move would take us away from painful memories and family complications, giving us the opportunity to define our relationship on our own terms. We found a rundown mid-century modern house with excellent bones but desperately needing renovation. Evenings and weekends were spent tearing out old carpet, refinishing hardwood floors, and designing a space that reflected both our tastes. Working side by side, covered in paint or sawdust, I often thought about how different this felt from my marriage to Emma, where renovations had been sources of tension rather than collaboration. 2 years after the affair that ended our previous marriages, we ran into Jake at a professional conference in Chicago. I was there presenting on sustainable commercial design. He was attending with his company. Sophia had stayed in Denver busy with a major client project. We ended up alone at the hotel bar, an awkward silence stretching between us until Jake finally spoke. "You seem good," he said, studying my face for signs of lingering anger. "I am," I replied honestly. "Better than I ever expected to be after everything." Jake nodded, swirling the ice in his drink. "Emma and I split up 6 months ago. She found messages on my phone from someone at work. The irony was not lost on either of us. I was surprised to feel compassion rather than satisfaction. I am sorry to hear that." "No, you are not," he said with a bitter laugh. "You and Sophia were right all along. When you build something on a foundation of lies and betrayal, it does not last. It was never about being right, Jake. We just wanted to be happy." "And are you happy with her?" The question was loaded with complicated history, but my answer was simple. Yes, happier than I ever knew was possible. As I said the words, I realized their complete truth. The journey had been painful, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. When I returned to Denver, I brought home a vintage ring I had found in an antique shop near the conference center. The following weekend, after we finished the final touches on our home renovation, I asked Sophia to marry me in our completed kitchen, the heart of the home we had rebuilt together. "We started this relationship surrounded by brokenness," I said, kneeling before her. "But look what we built. I want to keep building with you for the rest of my life." Her yes was immediate, her smile radiant through happy tears. Planning our wedding involved careful consideration of family dynamics, but we were determined to celebrate our love without being defined by past pain. We chose a small ceremony in a botanical garden, inviting only those who had supported our relationship from the beginning. Looking back on the journey that brought us here, I am grateful for even the painful parts. The betrayal that once seemed like the end of my world became the beginning of something authentic and beautiful. Sophia and I often remark that we might have spent our entire lives in marriages that were comfortable but never truly fulfilling, if not for the affair that shattered our illusions. The lesson I learned through all of this is that sometimes life's most painful detours lead exactly where you were meant to be all along. Trust can be rebuilt. Love can be found in unexpected places. And sometimes the person who helps you heal your heart ends up claiming it completely. Have you ever found happiness after betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences that might help you through your own challenges. Consider sharing this video with someone who might need to hear that pain can transform into something beautiful with time. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the people who are meant to be in your life come in the most unexpected ways.